Hello ladies and frogs, and welcome back to another video. I hope everyone's doing well today. I'm doing pretty good. I'm filming right now in my room. I usually film out in my car, but my car is currently broke down and I just don't want to sit out there because it's kind of cold and rainy. So anyways, today I'm here with another story time, and I wasn't planning on doing another workplace story time video, but I have had some very funny updates to this situation recently, and I didn't even know updates to this situation were even possible, so we're just gonna get right into it. I am gonna keep some of the details pretty brief and not very specific because of the current situation, but to set the scene for you guys, around 2 years ago, I was living on my own and I was working two jobs. I worked at a coffee shop and then I also worked at a dispensary. And I was a pretty frequent customer of this place. I was friends with everybody who worked there before I started working there, and I actually got the job because they all wanted me to come work there and I needed a little bit of extra money, so I figured why not. And one of the girls who worked here, I'm gonna call her Amanda, she was really adamant about me applying there and trying to get a job there, and so I knew that I was a shoo-in for sure because her dad was the owner and he did basically anything she wanted him to, so I knew that once she was pushing for me to get the job, I knew I basically had it. So I started working there, everything was fine. Like I said, I was friends with all of these people before I even started working there, but I was closest with Amanda and another coworker called Mac, and obviously for privacy reasons, these are not their real names. Now, also let me preface that I was not getting paid a lot to work here. We all know what the general minimum wage is. I was getting paid maybe $2 over that, and there were some benefits to working here, like a 20% discount, and we were paid every week, which was really nice, and we also got tips, and that is really important for later in the story. Anyways, most of the time I worked there, I worked late nights, and I worked with Amanda or Mac. Typically it was all three of us working together, and we were basically just like the Three Musketeers. We were always hanging out together, we were always joking around, really fun, really, cool, whatever. Now, there was also a guy who worked here, and we're gonna call him Adam, and him and Amanda were dating, and they were kind of on and off. They were in a pretty toxic relationship, I'm gonna say. And I guess once she finally decided to break up with him for real, he went haywire. So one night, me, Amanda, and Mac are all working together, and her ex-boyfriend Adam comes in and starts screaming, throwing a fit. Keep in mind, this is his place of business, okay? He's screaming at her, he's yelling in front of customers, he's throwing things. It's outrageous. And one of our regular customers, we're gonna call him Javier, he was a regular, he was 18 years old, I think, and we all hung out with him. And I guess Adam had gotten it in his head that Javier and Amanda were sleeping together, and because Amanda was 23 or 24 at the time, the age gap was a little weird because Javier had just turned 18, so he was shouting some pretty inappropriate things at her. And for clarification, Amanda and Javier were not sleeping together. But anyways, while this whole thing is going on, me and Mac are trying to de-escalate the situation. Mac is telling him to be quiet, telling him to leave, he's not listening, yada yada yada. Well, eventually he says something that is very not okay, and Mac loses their shit. Mac ends up charging at him and straight sucker punching him in the face, and because Adam was standing in the doorway of the business, he flew out of the door and onto the parking lot outside. And then at that point, Amanda and Mac are just absolutely wailing on this dude. Keep in mind, Amanda and Mac are 5'8", 5'9", and this guy's a strong 5'4" on a good day. This is when we discover that Adam actually had two of his friends waiting for him in the car, and so now they jump out, and now they're trying to defend him, and now I'm in the fight trying to defend him. It was a whole clusterfuck, but long story short, we won, and he ran away with his tail between his legs. Shockingly, he did not get fired for that either, but let's just say after that entire situation, tension was high, okay? Feelings were running very high, emotions were all over the place, and that was kind of the first time I had been in a situation like that, so my adrenaline was still kicking pretty hard. So about an hour later, we're all still kind of hopped up and talking about it when a customer walks in. Now, keep in mind, the environment of this workplace was very laid back and chillax. Anyone who walked through that door, I was talking to them like they were my best friend. I was talking to them like we'd known each other for years, and it was just another day. So of course, I had seen this guy 2 or 3 times before, so when he walks in this door, I'm like, you will not believe what happened today, dude. Do you want to hear about this drama? And of course, he's all for it. So I'm giving him the play-by-play. Me, Amanda, and Mac are all circled around my phone with this guy watching the fight video and everything. We're all giggling and laughing about it. We talk about it for a couple more minutes, and then eventually this guy buys what he came for, and then he leaves. And as soon as he walks out the door, me, Amanda, and Mac all start talking about how attractive this guy was, how funny he was, how handsome he was, how cool he was, how we were hoping he was going to come back in. So it's established that we all had kind of a crush on this random guy, right? And it was kind of normal for us to talk about customers like after they left the building, so this wasn't anything like out of the ordinary. Like, a lot of attractive people came in, we would talk about the attractive people, it was just whatever. And it would have been just whatever if right before he walked out the door he hadn't given me the side eye, like the I think you're cute side eye, like the I want to get your number side eye. So obviously I was thinking about him for a minute after that, and he ended up coming in like another 2 times over the next couple weeks, and I had definitely like developed a crush on this guy at this point. Like, every time he came in we would chat it up, we would talk to each other, it was fine. And this was around the time that I had freshly just gotten licensed as a tattoo artist, and so I was kind of excited to tattoo people. So one day at work I decided to promote my tattoos a little bit. So customers who came in, if they seemed chill, if we were talking it up well, I was like, hey, just so you know, I do tattoos. And wouldn't you know it, of all days, he comes in. So immediately I'm like, this is my chance to shoot my shot. So when he comes up to the window to check out, I'm like, hey, I do tattoos. You seem like the kind of guy who would like a tattoo. Here's my Snapchat. He gives me the eyes again before he leaves. Me, Mac, and Amanda are all gushing about it. We're all so excited that I just got this guy's Snapchat. And best believe I was giving Amanda and Mac the play-by-play as this relationship with this guy was blooming, was blossoming, whatever. And Amanda and Mac were both cheering me on. Amanda was cheering me on really hard. So imagine my surprise when a couple months later I announced to Amanda and Mac that me and this guy have started dating, and all of a sudden it's like a switch went off in Amanda's head. She immediately starts catching attitudes with me. She's being really distant. She's being passive aggressive. And I'm Snapchatting her and texting her asking to hang out, and she's not responding to me. And then one day, Mac messages me and says, hey, I don't think Amanda wants to be your friend anymore. She called you two-faced. So now I'm confused, but I'm like, I'm not gonna push it. If she doesn't want to hang out with me anymore, she doesn't have to. And her and I just keep it amicable, you know, at work, but we don't really talk outside of that anymore. And at one point she did try to get confrontational with me, and I just told her that I really didn't care that much about the situation to fight over it. And I guess that really ticked her off, the fact that I didn't want to fight about it. Because remember how I said that the owner was basically her dad and would do anything that she asked of him? Well, the next day I was fired without any legitimate reason. Prior to this entire situation, the boss had nothing but good things to say about me. I'm actually pretty sure like 2 days prior to this, the boss was talking to me about how much of a good job I was doing and how he was considering a raise. But whatever, it was fine. I was not that butthurt about it. I was like, I really don't want to work in an environment that promotes behavior like that anyways. So we go our separate ways, whatever. I do have this hypothesis in my head that I was fired because of Amanda, you know, which ended up being confirmed later on. Like I said, though, it wasn't any skin off my back because it was a job that was only paying me $2 over minimum wage, and me and my then boyfriend had a really good laugh about it. Now, remember when I said that we received tips at this job? Let me tell you that in the entire time I worked there, I did not once receive any of the tips. Now, the rules set in place by the owner was that all of the tips went into a giant tip jar that was split and distributed evenly to each employee at the end of the month. And working there for multiple months, I had not once received a share of the tips. Neither had any other employee. So there was quite a few months worth of tips that had been racked up. And I was warned that sometimes he's kind of slow with splitting them, so I wasn't too worried about it while working there, but now that I'm fired, I didn't really think I'd get the opportunity to get them. So I decided like a couple days after I had gotten fired that I was going to go there and try and collect a portion of the tips. And for the next 2 months, I tried collecting my portion of the tips. And the only reason I tried collecting my portion of the tips is because I knew it was a lot. Because every customer that came in was putting $5, $10, a couple $1 bills in that tip jar. We were easily making over $1,000 in tips a day. When I tell you that I was in that store every other day trying to speak with the owner, trying to collect my tips, and it was like a game of cat and mouse. Every single time I walked in that building, I would watch him make a beeline for the office. He would shut the door, and anytime I tried to talk to him, the employees would tell me that he's busy and that I'd have to come by later. Now, I'm not an idiot, so I stay persistent, and not only do I stay persistent, but I make sure that every single time I walk in that building, my phone is recording, so I've always got evidence of whatever is said and done. So finally, like 2.5 months later, I finally end up catching him. He wasn't fast enough, and I ask him, hey, I've been trying to get my tips for a couple months now. I would just like my portion of the tips, please. And instead of trying to relay this whole thing, I'm just going to show you the TikTok video that I posted about it.
If I have to try real quick. Okay. Did we start?
Yeah.
I was just wondering about my tips. Been working?
There was none. They got distributed between everyone else. You'd have to get it from them.
So you gave one of my tips to everyone else?
They weren't your tips.
I worked here.
Yeah.
I worked for them.
Yeah. You could have got them. They're gone. It's nothing I can tell you. I don't know.
When they come back.
Now, I'm not going to bore you with the entire video because it is roughly 3 minutes long, but did you know that withholding tips is actually a federal offense? Now, if you didn't understand it in the video, basically what he said is that he gave all of my tips to all of my old coworkers. Now, I know it varies from state to state, but this is actually a pretty serious crime to commit, which is why I had my phone recording, because I knew that something was going on and there was a reason he was avoiding me. Now, I don't have the second recording anymore because it was on my old iPad. My old iPad is long broken, but I did have a recording of Mac when I had gone in later that night to ask them if they had received their tips yet, and they said no. Mac actually clarified that they hadn't received any share of tips since before I had even gotten hired, which meant that if he didn't give my tips away to my coworkers, then where were my tips going? Now, generally, like as I've said, withholding tips in my state is a pretty serious offense, but do you know what's even more of a serious offense? The owner keeping the tips made by the employees. That could get you in some serious trouble as a business owner. Now, obviously, I didn't end up following through with anything. Like, for a while, I was considering taking him to court over it, but that involved hiring a lawyer and court dates and serving of legal papers, and I was like 19 years old. I did not have the money or the time to be doing something like that. So as angry as I was, I did decide to just let it go and take the L. But if the story ended there, I would not be making this video, would I? Now, after I no longer worked there, I also chose to no longer support that business, so I was no longer a customer of them. Not only because I didn't want that owner getting any more of my money than he already did, but I did get a job at one of their competitor stores, and he tried to ban me for that, which obviously didn't go through, but I just didn't want to support a business like that. And with that, I also kind of distanced myself from Mac. It wasn't necessarily like a conscious decision, but work friendships fade. That's just something that happens when you don't see somebody every single day. Now imagine the shock on my face when Mac randomly messaged me out of the blue just a couple days ago asking me if I still had that video. Of course, I responded right away and I said yes, and I asked why. Now tell me why karma is so amazing, because Mac goes on to tell me that they actually have a lawsuit against them right now from a former employee for almost the exact same reason. This ex-employee is opening up a lawsuit against them for 1, not receiving tips, and 2, not receiving time and a half for overtime. Now, if you don't really understand that, if you work anything over 40 hours a week, you are meant to be paid time and a half, which is your hourly wage and then half of your hourly wage on top of that. So if you make $10 an hour, anything over 40 hours, you should be making $15 an hour for that extra time. And that also is a federal offense to not pay employees time and a half for overtime. So even though I really never had the cojones to go through with filing a lawsuit or even a police report with them, I'm really glad that somebody is. And Mac is choosing to stay pretty close to the situation. They're still being pretty friendly with the owners under the guise of like solidarity, but they're also a part of the lawsuit, which I think is really funny. So obviously these videos that I have been emailed over to this girl's lawyer. She's asked me if I want to join in on it, and that's about all the detail that I can give because I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to say anything else. So I'm actually going to end that story here. I do think it's really funny that this is all resurfacing out of the blue almost 2 years later, but also it feels kind of gratifying to know that that owner is getting what's coming to him. And also that boy that I met at the smoke shop one day, we're still going strong. 2 years later, I love him to death. He's the love of my life, and Amanda can suck it. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, all of my social media links are posted up in the description down below. And go ahead and post in the comments if you guys have any other crazy work stories. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!